Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
I've been going out with a girl, her name is Julie, but last night she said to me when we were watching telly.
Ken's in Wallington. Ken, what's in the box?
Well, I think you're right to say we don't know. I'm being very literal here. We don't know, and we can't possibly know until we go through that gate. Can I just give an analogy of practically every major decision you take in your life? When you leave school, when you leave university,
Sorry to be pedantic.
Sorry?
It's not a decision when you leave school. Sorry to be pedantic.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. That's fine. I accept that point. All right. When you change jobs, when you go for a job, you don't know what's on the other side of that fence.
No, you do.
When you move to another country,
you do, Ken.
When you have an idea.
Well, no, you have
idea.
a very clear idea, and you talk to the person who's offering you the job, and you discuss the terms and conditions. You ask how much you're going to get paid. You ask what your holiday allowance will be. You ask whether you get pension or sickness benefits. Where will the office be? What are the transport links with the new job? And most importantly, what will my tax rate be, and how much money will I have left over at the end of every month?
Yeah. No, I accept that. But there are decisions in life where you don't know what is on the other side. If you're an entrepreneur,
yes,
and you want to start up a business, all right, you go to the bank, you apply for a loan and all the rest of it.
Yes.
You give them your business plan and what have you.
You give them your
can't
business what?
What is down the line?
What was that word you just used after business?
Plan.
Oh yeah, so that doesn't work as an analogy either.
I know you've been emphasising the point about they haven't got a plan.
Yes.
What I've heard.
Could you imagine going to the bank for your analogy to work? You go to the bank, you ask for £1 million, they ask to see your business plan, and you say, no, I've got sovereignty and control, and they give you £1 million. That is, I know it's not what you intended when you rang in, but that's what you've ended up arguing.
No, well, the point is that until you cross that barrier, until you go through that door, you won't know literally every detail on what's on the other side.
No one's asking for every detail.
I think you're rather dramatising it. I understand why you're doing that. That's fair enough. But
hang on a minute. You're patronising me slightly now. I'm doing it because I don't think people walk through doors without knowing what's on the other side. You've rung in to tell me that they do. You've given me two or three examples that were really rubbish. So either you try again.
It isn't walking through a door.
What is it then?
We've been in the EU, formerly EC, for about 40 years, right?
Yeah.
And before that, we knew exactly what trading terms we were on, how we control migration, and all the rest of it.
No, we didn't.
So
we didn't have any controls on migration prior to 1974.
Well, I think there probably were a few. We had our own courts. We had our, we
still have our own courts. We still have our own courts, Ken.
No, we don't.
Yes,
we
do.
have the Court of Last Resort is the European Court of Justice, and that will go.
Yes.
That will definitely go. So that is something we do know.
It won't definitely go, Ken. Have you not even read that? No, it won't definitely go. It can't definitely go if, for example, we want to have regulatory alignment on trade, because the supranational body that has to actually exercise jurisdiction over two different countries.
Yes, if we go down that route.
No, it's not going down a route, you see, Ken. Again, I sense that I'm wasting my time and my breath, but you've rung in to argue from a position of absolute absurdity. You're saying it's like going to the bank with a business plan, and the whole phone-in is built upon the idea that they haven't got a plan. You're saying that it's like going for a new job without knowing what it is, and we listed all the things that you know before you go for a new job. Then you fall into the trap of talking about the European Court of Justice without really knowing what it means or what it represents, and yet you'll go away convinced. Well, you didn't, did you? Because you didn't realise that if we're going to have regulatory alignment, someone has to sit in judgment.
We're not necessarily.
So I'll ask you again: what's on the other side of the door?
What's on the other side of the door is. I know you've talked about sovereignty. We will be a sovereign nation again.
And the white paper on Brexit that said the British Parliament has always been sovereign. Who got that wrong? The Parliament, or I don't know. Maybe it was a mistake at Ryman's when they got it printed out.
Yeah, I appreciate the jocular nature of this, but I'm trying to be
Stops
a bit
me getting
serious
angry.
here.
I'm being very serious. You just said we'll have sovereignty, and the white paper on Brexit stated we have always been sovereign. So what are you talking about, Ken?
We haven't always been sovereign.
So the white paper's wrong?
Well, I don't know what clause of the white. I haven't got the white
It's the
paper
first
in front
line.
of
It's
me.
the very
I can't
first line.
comment
The
on that.
British Parliament has always been sovereign, but it has not always seemed that way.
Well, it certainly hasn't seemed that way.
But it always was, you see. So last chance, what's on the other side of the door?
The plan that's been put forward, as I understand it, by those on the Brexiteer side,
There is no plan.
A Canada plan.
No, there is no
plus.
plan. There is no plan. If there was, they'd publish it. They'd be touring the studios today talking about it.
Widely reported in the press that that's the case. But if it's not, well, fair enough. But
So the plan is not the one that the Prime Minister is pursuing. It's the one that the critics of the Prime Minister are somehow claiming without going public in order to defend it or explain it. That's the thing on the other side of the door, and that's why you want to go through it.
Well, as I say, you can't predict what is on the other side of the door. The safe position is to say we won't go through the door.
Oh, finally, Ken. Finally. There you go. That felt good, didn't it? It's 10:48.
No one can deny the improvements in day-to-day life in Northern Ireland. Far from perfect, but vastly improved from what we used to see. But equally, Fran, you're absolutely right. There was a report from probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago now, from the Joint Intelligence Committee, I think it was, in Parliament, saying that Northern Ireland still had the most concentrated terror threat in Western Europe. Per capita of population. So that's one to hold on to in all of this. Fran, thank you very much for your call. Fran calling from Kingswood there. Mike in Ware. Hello, Mike.
Hello. Yeah, good afternoon. Yeah, I said to the girl that I spoke to earlier that I think everyone's looking at this situation from the wrong perspective. Everyone's got their view on soft Brexit, hard Brexit, this Brexit, that. But the thing is, if the situation were to occur, as happened in the past, for example, Germany we declared war with Germany. We became at war with Germany. All of a sudden, overnight, all bets were off. Decisions had to have been taken. Borders had to be opened and closed. Trade deals had to be closed down, opened up. All these things were done very, very quickly. And we've got a situation now where we're not at war with Germany, but in a way we're at war with the EU in terms of what they want us to accept and what they want us to continue to accept, which, in my opinion, as a leaver, is, basically we are being controlled. Our laws, our borders, we don't have control of all these things, and that's what the outvote was all about. Now, if we were on a war footing, all these things would have to be done. There would have to be a solution found to the Irish border. There would have to be, all sorts of things would have to be done quickly. Would the other countries, if we were at war with Germany or any other individual country in Europe, which is
hang on. So you are putting Brexit and the demands of Brexit on a footing with being at war, are you?
Well, no, I'm suggesting that if people were to take that view, look, this is that important that things have got to be done, and they've got to be done now. You can't wait for a transition period. You can't wait. We've had 2 years of people faffing about this, that, and the other. We can do this, we can't do that. The bottom line was the vote was to leave the European Union. Very simple, leave it. Not stay half in it, not bow down to ECJ rules and all this. It was an in-out vote, and we voted out.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Mike in Ware. It's been a while since we had a bish bash bosh, but we've had a bish bash bosh there from Mike. Thank you.
Let's go talk to Jason in Rains Park on that. Jason, you're on the radio. What are you going to tell me? Good morning.
Morning, Nick.
Yes.
Yeah, everybody thinks badgers are fluffy and lovely.
They are. They're lovely. They wouldn't harm a fly.
I was night fishing. I had one of them attack me.
No.
I ended up a tree. Chased me round all over the place. He did.
Badgers don't chase.
Disembowel you, you know.
A badger could
Snorting
not
and
disembowel.
shuffling.
Look, never trust a badger. The badger could not have disemboweled you.
Hey, well, imagine in the dark, and all of a sudden you hear, all the bushes are moving.
That's frightening.
And his head comes out. They're half big. And I sort of thought, all I had was my bait and a rod.
Yeah.
I'm next to the river, and the only thing closest I could get to was a tree.
Right.
And it's come out like a rhino. And it's come straight towards it. It wasn't frightened or anything. I reckon I was just in its way.
Jason, it didn't come out like a rhinoceros. It's a badger.
They're big. Do you know when they charge you, they go at you on their back legs like a bear?
Jason, it wasn't a bear either. It wasn't a rhino. It wasn't a bear. It was it was roughly the size of a large cat.
No, this is the myth. They're not. They're nearly as big as an Alsatian, and when they come at you, they stand on their back legs.
Where was this gigantic, the abominable badger? Where was it?
This was in Hampshire.
So you're telling me that roaming the leafy glades of Hampshire, there's giant-sized badgers trying to attack fishermen?
You can see. I mean, I'm sure sometimes you drive past and they're looking over their hedges. They're that big.
Jason, thank you. It's been a long week, Jason. Have a good weekend.
Do we have time for Jonathan? We do. Jonathan in Bishop Stortford. Hello.
Oh, yes, good afternoon, Peter. Yes, Mr. Carney is really a staunch Remainer. I mean, he's trying to support Mrs May in every which way, which is typical of him to come out with a comment like this. It is absolutely Project Fear. I mean, things go up and down all the time in life, and quite frankly, I have to say, why we've got a foreign gentleman in that job, we should have somebody UK-born doing that job, a point of interest.
Why?
Because his interests are elsewhere.
Well, but the reason he was chosen is he proved himself in his previous jobs, and you know.
Well, yes, but you see,
why are you afraid of foreigners?
Oh no, I'm just saying, why haven't we got a UK-born person in that job?
Why do we have to?
Why have we got someone that's got interests elsewhere in the world rather than here? And he is a staunch Remainer. And the other thing, Sheila, which you might not be aware of, is what it's been spoken about why Mr Carney's, so gallantly said he'll do another 7 months. Do you know why he's doing that 7 months? It's not to help at this country. It's self-interest because he's going to get a peerage and then he's going to be in a House of Lords. So he's not doing it. He's doing all this to help himself.
I think he quite likes the idea of going back to Canada, but we'll find out soon enough.
No,
I'm just interested.
That's been written in a major paper today.
All right. I'm just interested, Jonathan, in this idea that non-British people shouldn't be allowed to hold senior and key roles in this country, let alone jobs in the NHS and schooling and all the rest of it. Where do you draw the line there? I mean, should Prince Harry have been allowed to marry Meghan?
Well, yeah, but what you're missing is you're missing a very big point here.
Am I?
This guy is meant to be talking on our behalf, the UK. How can he honestly do that when he's got interests elsewhere? He comes from Canada. He doesn't come from this country. He doesn't understand this country. He doesn't understand the culture of this country. So how can he honestly be speaking on behalf in such an important role as the Bank of England?
Well, I reject your claim that he can't understand this country, he can't understand the culture of this country. My most important demand from the Governor of the Bank of England is that he understands the economy of this country, and he clearly does.
Well, why is it then, Sheila, that the Mervyn King, the previous position holder of that job, actually is a staunch Brexiter?
Well, they're allowed
how can they be so different?
Well, they're allowed to have different views, clearly, aren't they?
Yeah, but surely it's the same view, isn't it? It's the same job. So why is one person... But you see, this is the point that I want to make. The reason why you've got a staunch Remainer is because this guy has got interests other than the UK in his head. He's not a Mervyn King, and we need a Mervyn King.
So I'm keen to know where you would draw that no foreigners in key positions line.
Nobody's saying that. I'm just saying there's certain
Just this one.
When people put their head against the parapet like this guy does on a regular basis, like all the other old fossils, like sort of Heseltine and all the others who made a mess of their lives politically, I mean...
Nonsense. Michael Heseltine is joining us in a couple of weeks, and we'll put paid to that notion, Jonathan, that he made a mess of his political life. An extraordinary politician. Whichever way you vote, Michael Heseltine is an extraordinary politician. Jonathan, thank you very much indeed for your call. I didn't agree with much of what you said, but thank you for it.
Bringing into the conversation someone who likes to go to the name of Big Jim. And you're chairman of the Democratic Football Lads Alliance. Is that right, Jim?
No, I'm on the council, and when we have our regular meetings...
You're on the council, I see.
Yeah,
my apologies.
We don't have a leadership as such.
You don't have a leadership, I see, OK. No. And you declined to give me your last name, which is, indeed, you're right, but just to clarify, that's why you want to be known as Big Jim?
Yes, please.
All right. You're a football fan?
Yes, definitely.
Which team do you follow?
I support the Villa.
Aston Villa.
For my sins.
All right. What are the drives and the motive behind the Democratic Football Lads Alliance, Jim?
Well, first off, I'd like to just counter what the gentleman said from Sky News, that we were there on Saturday against Muslims, against Islam, and specifically grooming gangs. That wasn't the case. We were there to support the women and children of Sunderland, who've basically had enough of the rapes that are going on in the city of Sunderland, Middlesbrough and Newcastle.
Right.
And they're campaigning to get awareness to the public and to the young girls that are going out of the night.
Okay. But what if you had a constitution, if you had an agreement that binds you all together, what is your principal aim?
To fight all forms of extremism. That be far-right extremism and far-left extremism as well.
Right. I mean, you talk about fight that. You're aware of some of the messages that are on the website of the Democratic Football Lads Alliance.
Well, that's another one as well. I'm going to actually...
Well, Jim, I've got them in front of...
We don't have a website.
I'm sorry, my apologies. I have a Facebook page. My apologies, I misspoke.
Yeah,
but this
a Facebook page. So what we have a social media team.
Right.
So you can fully understand it's very difficult to police, but what we do, the social media team work from 8 in the morning till 10 at night. And any comments of a racial nature are removed.
Why, when there are comments such as Muslims are effing scum and then the C word, why aren't they just deleted?
They are deleted.
Well, they're here now. It's been here for 9 hours.
Right, okay. That needs to be addressed, as I say, by the social media team.
But, I mean, I've just pulled out one. This is a litany, Jim. Page after page after page after page using the C word, the F word and other slogans and other epithets about Muslims. Okay. This isn't an isolated incident, Jim.
Which page are you referring to?
Well, I won't give you the necessary news name, but I'm happy to send them to you. Probably best that I don't. Yeah, but it ceases.
You can't quote which page it's on. There might be a slight bit of fabrication there.
Jim, it is the top post on your Facebook page. This isn't policed in any way, shape or form. The reality is, isn't it?
Page are you referring to?
The true FLA, the true... I'm telling you, the true FLA-Democratic Football Lads Alliance.
Fantastic. Well, that's not our page.
Oh, here we go. So what am I to assume this is then? So you're telling me none of the people who contribute to this were at your rally yesterday? On the weekend.
So this is a post from Sunday then, not now.
Right. You've got a written report response to the Sky News piece on this page from the True FLA. If this is not to be... And then further down, you will see these vile comments about... Why don't you just be honest, Jim? Many of your colleagues, I don't know about you personally, but this is founded on people who don't like Muslims.
I disagree with you.
Persuade me otherwise.
I disagree with you.
Okay, persuade me otherwise.
Perspective and the alliances that we've drawn up around the country.
Right.
That is not our case. And if you look at our mission statement, you look at our manifesto...
I've asked you 3 times. I've asked you many times, what is your mission statement? What is the main part of your... What are you set up to do?
As I say, we're against all forms of extremism. We want to make our country safe for the future of our children and our grandchildren. It's as simple as that. We don't see the establishment doing this.
Safe from what?
From harm in the future.
What, any form of harm are you talking about?
Any form of harm.
Right. Why do you condone the actions that we saw in the Sky News report of what would appear to be your supporters hitting horses with flags and effectively trying to invade and storm the police line?
We certainly do not condone those actions. And as you'll see from the footage, it was in fact our DFLA stewards who were attempting to stop the people getting through.
But why are these people attracted to your organisation, do you suppose?
I would personally say the one gentleman in question in the yellow jacket, I think, was somewhat... I would say a dubious nature.
Right. Really, you're just the new face.
Not one of our members.
Right.
I'd attempted earlier on in the march to push him back behind the women. I think there were powers...
But he wasn't alone in the violence, Jim, was he? If you look at the Sky News report, he wasn't alone. He wasn't the only... Admittedly, he was the only one hitting a horse, but there were plenty of other people.
People were pushing through, but there was no actual acts of violence if you look at all the footage.
You're just the new organisation for the EDL, aren't you, Jim? That's the reality.
No, not at all.
Well, it is reported that many members of the EDL have come across to the Democratic Football.
No, not at all. The members of the EDL that turned up on Saturday, EDL is still an organisation, and it's not affiliated to us. They're still marching around the UK. They're in Worcester the other week.
How many members do you have who are part of UKIP, do you think?
I would say a considerable amount, actually.
Yes. What is it, do you suppose, about the Democratic Football Lads Alliance that attracts UKIP members?
I think it's the fact that we're normal, everyday people, and we're not represented.
All right. Lastly...
If you look at the two major parties, the Labour and the Tory party, they're not represented with us. I'm a Labour man all my life, but I cannot vote for a party now that's just going not in the direction of a working class man's ideals.
All right. Well, whom would you vote for if there were an election?
I'd be on the line of UKIP or the potential for independent candidates.
All right. Lastly, do you not realise the point that was made by the Sky News journalist? The fact that you know about Rotherham and Telford and Oxford and Rochdale and all these other grooming instances is because it's reported on the media, such as LBC and Sky News.
Sorry, say that question again, please.
The reason that you know about these grooming outrages is because it's reported by stations such as LBC and Sky News. That's how you and your colleagues in the DFLA know about it.
Yeah, I can agree somewhat with that, but the lack of activity, I'll just touch on Telford quickly. I know we've only got a little bit of time.
Well, we're over.
But there was a call through by Lucy Allen for this public inquiry.
Yeah.
And still, we don't have the inquiry in place.
All right. There's a Conservative MP who's involved in that. Jim, this is your name, and you're on the council of the Democratic Football Lads Alliance. I'm grateful for your input. I don't necessarily agree with much of what you say.
Greg is in Sidcup. Greg, what would you like to say?
James, nice to speak to you again. I certainly have been outside the clinic. I haven't been there recently, I must admit, maybe not. What
happened last time we spoke? Are we going to just go around in the same circle?
I hope not. I hope not. I'm just explaining to you. Yeah. But I completely disagree with your position, quite honestly. My argument is this: you're suggesting, I think an earlier caller suggested that you should really be protesting outside Parliament or something like that, which I think is done anyway. There is an organisation specifically for that. But there are often girls who actually do need help. They feel that they have no other choice. And often when there is somebody there who will help them, will provide them. And I think somewhere in the region, I know one of the organizations which I'm associated with have, in fact, helped about 500 girls, 500 children are now born and now living. I personally have had girls stay in our house over the months, had the children. Some have been given up for adoption, some have been kept. But these women actually did want another choice. And that's the reality of the situation.
So what would you do then? Create somewhere where they can go to ask for help without having to run the risk of having someone spit in their face?
Well, I heard those things. I've never had that experience. I've never seen any of the groups which I've been...
So where do you stand outside? You stand outside abortion clinics?
Right, yes.
Telling women not to go in and to come round to your house instead?
No, look, let's not be so facetious, quite honestly, James. Someone is out there...
Well, hang on a minute. Let me rephrase it in a less facetious way, then.
Yeah,
you stand outside an abortion clinic and invite young women to come to your house instead of going in?
No, because it doesn't work like that. You'd give them a leaflet, you'd ask them if they would like an alternative, give the call. There's an organisation set up specifically for
So how do they end up in your house, then, Greg?
Well... We provide if it's convenient for us, if it works for us, we would say we would provide a room.
So you do stand outside abortion clinics suggesting to women that they come to your house instead of going in. Why did you use the word facetious? I think the word you were looking for was factual.
But
they do look the same.
Typically,
actually.
in your style
Let's not
of your
talk about
program.
me, mate. I don't invite vulnerable young women to come and live in my spare room. Let's talk about you. Where do you get your motivation from? Is it religious or is it, I don't know.
Moral.
What word would I use?
Moral.
Okay, so what if my morals instruct me that I'm going to come around and sit on your doorstep and hurl abuse through your window every day, and I'll claim that's my morals? How would you feel about that? Maybe I'd harass members of your family. I'd perhaps encourage them to come and move into my spare room.
Is this a monologue, or is this actually, are we having a discussion? I'm saying to you, James, that first of all, you well know it's not like that.
No, I don't. You sound like a deeply weird man to me.
That's because you don't have the experience I have.
Of course it is, yes, absolutely.
Every time I've been at any of these centres, I know that the people are highly disciplined. Nobody's ever been arrested, incidentally, over the last
Why have you changed the subject?
Years.
We were talking about you inviting vulnerable women to come and live in your spare room.
Look, James, great conversation, but I'm sorry, but you can...
I'm glad you're sorry. I would be.
Now. I can see you on back foot now because you are purposely being really facetious in terms of what you're saying. I'm saying to you...
I apologise for being facetious, Greg, although I think the word you're looking for is factual. Could you just confirm for me that you stand outside abortion clinics encouraging young women to come and move into your spare room?
No, I can't confirm that.
Oh, OK, then. I completely misunderstood you. Why did you tell me that you did?
Well, because I'm telling you that...
This is just hang on a minute. I just want people listening to know this is me on the back foot, OK? Just so we're absolutely clear about that. Carry on, mister. Invite vulnerable women to come and move into my spare room.
Very good.
Very true.
What I'm saying to you is there are organisations set up where they have places where people...
But we're not talking about them. We're talking about you.
Yeah, I don't...
Mister, I stand outside abortion clinics encouraging young women to move into my spare room.
I don't personally ask them. I will be...
Well, they turn up by accident?
I will be called by a particular organisation.
Of course you will.
Which I'm associated with.
Of course you will.
If it's possible,
yes,
we will do it as a family.
Okay.
I have a family.
Of course you
we
do.
will do it. If it's not possible, because...
What if my morals encouraged me to start harassing members of your family? Would you be cool with that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, excellent. Well, leave your address at the door. It's 12:45.
Danny in Epsom, hello.
Hi, I'd say the reason it's become toxic is because the legitimate concerns of sort of native British people we've been ignored. I mean, if you think mass immigration was unpopular in the 50s and 60s, one of the top two topics on the doorstep in the last 6 general elections has been immigration. I interviewed Phil Willis, who was the immigration minister under Labour's 13-year tenure, and he admitted to me that in their 13-year tenure, they went out of their way to let more people in from outside the EU to, I quote, rub the noses of the right in diversity. They didn't cap new EU member states, and people were raising concerns all the way through, and we were ignored. If you think about this country as a whole, the census of 1951 was 98.9% of people identified as white, Christian, and they spoke English as their first language. In less than one man's lifetime later, look at the change. Now, no one's saying immigration's bad, but we are saying we didn't want this. We've had too much for too long, and it's fair to say that, and it's legitimate.
So you've used 2 words that ring alarm bells in my head. One is native, and one is white British. So let's just get a sense of what you mean by that. Well, hang on.
You don't need to worry about it.
No, I'm not worried. I'm just wanting to get clear where you're coming from, Danny, that's all. Native British people can, of course, be brown or black, can't they?
Well, I think what I'm saying is the reason I use that word is to illustrate the change that we've seen.
So when you say native, you mean white, do you?
I do. Yeah, I do. And
okay.
I'm trying to illustrate. People think that we've been this multicultural. Like yesterday's conversation, you said people were invited here. They were invited by governments. It's always been unpopular amongst the people. There weren't sort of fanfares at the
right, with some people. You can't speak for all people, Danny.
I'm just trying to point out
but some people.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is because lots of people didn't want it, and it's been unpopular. As I say, I've proved it to you with the figures. Go and have a look for yourself.
Yeah, but what didn't you? I mean, speak for yourself rather than other people. What don't you want from a 40-year span, say, of immigration? Because the reason many people, let's use the Windrush generation as an example, were invited over is we needed their number. We needed them.
Well, Windrush is a bit of a side story because the government invited them over because we needed them after World War II. But I think that's a bit. But what really bugs me.
What do you think? Finish a sentence because you've entered the territory. A lot of people who don't really want to tell me what their view is of never finishing a sentence. Would you rather Britain was whiter? Let me just ask you some nice big fat open questions. Would you rather Britain was whiter?
necessarily whiter, but I wish the immigration that we'd had been slower, had been more managed, so people could assimilate and absorb.
Which bits of it? Which bits of it slower? The EU stuff or the Windrush stuff?
All of it. No, all of it. I think all of the immigration that we've received, imagine if it was much more managed and much more lighter, people would find it easier to assimilate. They would absorb into the mass populace more.
So when all those people from the West Indies came over, hang on, when all those people from the West Indies came over to do particular jobs, and when all those Irish men and women came over to build motorways and the like, just to use two examples, if we did it more slowly, things would have happened more slowly. You'd have been, as in all those things I mentioned would have happened more slowly. All those jobs that were done would have happened more slowly. You'd have been happy to go along with that, would you?
Yes, I would. Yeah, I just think immigration in general, and a blind man could see we've had far too much for too long. And this is the problem. People try and, oh, well, maybe we haven't. They try and mix their words and you try and trip people up. You know, everybody out there knows we've had too much for too long.
No, they don't. No, Danny, please stop extrapolating your own view onto the entire populace, because it isn't shared by the entire populace. Just not. It's just not.
It's shared by a lot of people that don't want to ring up, because people find it very hard to articulate what they mean without coming across a certain way. And I think people are worried about it, so they don't call in. Well, they don't want to sort of. It's not about the individual person. So it's not about the individual.
No, it's not good enough. You see, because it is about. But it is about the individual person, Danny. If you say native British means white, because there are brown and black people who were born here 50 years ago. Are they British or not? Will they forever be something other than British, and their children and their grandchildren? Are they British?
Of course they are.
But earlier you said that native meant white when you said native.
Yeah, native British does, yeah. But they're still British, aren't they?
but even if they were born in Britain and their children and their grandchildren were born... You do know native has its origins in the word birth, don't you? That's what it means, about where you were born.
Why are we the only country on earth that doesn't have a native people? You can't talk about...
We haven't had a native people, as you call it, for centuries. We're a bunch of mongrels.
Yeah, that's the narrative that you like to take.
It's the truth. It's just the historic truth.
Look at the census of 1951, Sheila. I've made my point. You can go and have a look and see for yourself.
No, you have made. You have made a point. You have made a point, Danny.
Yeah,
and I'm now making a different. I'm now making a different one, which is that when you use the word native British, you mean white. When I use the word native British, I mean people born in Britain.
Oh, right. Well, that's just semantics, I guess.
It's really not. It means that you only accept that white people are native British, and I accept that anyone born in Britain is native British. Born as a British citizen in this country.
I think what you're doing on purpose is sort of not talking about the issue here.
I'm not.
Yesterday, I listened to your show yesterday, and you were talking about multiculturalism. And the thing is, I don't recognise that. No one told me that we were going to get rid of my own culture. When did we accept?
Where's it gone? What have you lost? What have you lost?
Well, who agreed to it?
What have you lost? What have you lost? What do you not have? Would you not have afternoon tea on the lawn anymore? Do you know what was so British and English that you now miss?
Well, when was it blindfolded under the?
No, tell me what you've missed. Tell me what you've lost. Name one thing. Is it afternoon tea?
I'll tell you what I've lost. I've lost walking through the town that I grew up in and looking around and recognising it. And instead of
what's changed?
Everything's changed. The shops, the people, the smells. Everything's changed. Everything's changed. And
that's life, Danny. Change is life, isn't it?
No, it's not, because we should have managed our immigration policy more.
So you do want it to be whiter?
I just think we should have had less of it, that's all. There's nothing wrong with immigration, but what we've had has been far too much for too long, and I think millions of people up and down the country agree with me.
OK, Danny, thank you for your call. Really interesting, Danny in Epsom. He's lost his culture. Couldn't quite tell me, apart from a couple of smells, what his culture was.
Chris in Reading, let's talk about Tommy Robinson. Should he be permitted to join UKIP? Obviously, he can be asked to join.
Definitely. I think Jared Bateman is aware of how popular he is and how... And I think
how popular is he?
He's very popular. And I tell you, there's people that I know that you wouldn't believe...
Right.
You wouldn't believe, actually think he's fantastic.
But when he has one of his rallies, or how many people turn up?
Well, I think there were lots of people that turned up in London. I watched the video and I watched the people speaking, and great speeches.
Right.
We've had enough. They reckon there's 1 million girls that have been raped now. They're not covering it on the media.
Right.
People are
what's that?
cross.
What's that? People are, well, I'm not surprised. What is that number of 1 million based on?
They think it's 1 million girls could have been raped.
No, I heard that. You just said that. But what's it based on?
Well, there's a lot of facts out on the internet.
It's on the internet.
Grooming.
Right.
Yeah, grooming gang.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, but you played it down, didn't you? Nobody talked about it when it was up north.
I've just let you say... Hold on.
The media talked it down in Moron.
You come out with a headline-grabbing number such as, they reckon it's up to 1 million, so I say...
So there was 1,000 in Moron, wasn't there?
No. Well, my understanding wasn't 1,000, but... Even if I allow you... excuse me, sir. Even if I allow you 1,000, how are you going to get me to 1 million? Do you realise what 1 million is?
What's a country?
Do you know what the population is of the United Kingdom?
Yeah, it's over 60 million.
Yeah, it's about 65 million.
There's grooming gangs.
So you're saying 1 in 65 people in this country has been raped by grooming. I don't think we've even got enough girls to do that. Can I put it to you, Chris, that yours is the fake news? Because the numbers don't... Well, I don't even think there's 1 million people in the age bracket if there's only 65 million of us in the country. You're peddling fake news, Chris, and it's got to stop.
Well, if a girl gets raped 40 times in one night, that's over 1 million.
No, you said there were 1 million victims. You didn't say 1 million instances of sexual activity. You said there were 1 million girls.
Anyway, there's been a lot, and the media has covered it up, and people are annoyed.
Well, of course, then they're right to be annoyed, and everything should be done, not least to uncover it, but also bring those to book. But we have to be aware of things called facts. Chris, I'm grateful for your input. You say let him in. Let's see what others make of it. Andy's in Seaford. You're on the radio. Andy, what are you going to tell me? Good morning.
I'm a member of UKIP.
You're a member of UKIP, did you say?
I am.
Yes, sir.
And after Benny Bolton took over, I took the membership away.
This is a terrible phone line. Have you got a tin... You've got a kettle on your head or something?
No, sir. I've got a brand new phone, actually.
Honestly, is this a mobile, a handheld phone? What is it?
Mobile.
Oh, OK. Not the best of it. Oh, that's a little better. That's a little better. Go ahead. So you're a member of UKIP, and you were saying, go on.
Yeah, I've welcomed Tommy Robinson.
You've worked with Tommy Robinson, did you?
No, welcome.
You welcome Tommy Robinson. OK, this is going to be tough because of your phone. When did you get this phone?
Saturday.
It's batteries. I'll tell you. Let someone talk to Andy and move him to a different part of his home or wherever the heck he is. I'll talk to Darren in the Forest of Dean. Darren, you're on the radio. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you? Right?
Yes, good, sir.
I'm actually, I should say, an ethnicity. I'm actually a black gentleman, 38. And
you're a 38-year-old black man?
Yes.
Okay.
And I've met Tommy Robinson, and I've spoken to him indirectly. He's absolutely shocking.
He's shocking?
What I mean by he's shocking in some of the views he's got. Very much far right. Indirectly racist.
Right. In what way? I mean, he's not here to defend himself. So, in what way are you saying? No, but in what way are you saying he behaved in a racist fashion? I'm not saying you're wrong. I just need to know.
No. Okay. Well, I mean racial. I mean actually in Muslims. There's good, I believe, and bad in everybody. If you completely always scrutinise the bad, you kind of picking just on the race.
Yes.
And people, and if you start dividing UKIP, it's always divided, isn't it? It's a finished party, in my opinion.
Yes.
And get something like Tommy Robinson involved, because it's going to make it more far right.
Yes.
They haven't got a political agenda that's actually worth listening to anymore. He's not popular. He's popular in one race, which is far right. His followers are far right, or indirectly racist, I believe.
Yes.
If that is the factual, please show me the amount statistically of black, Muslim, Asian actually members.
Darren, don't go. I want to get someone in. Hopefully, we can hear from Andy because I think he's a supporter of Tommy Robinson. Let's try again. Andy, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can.
Oh, that's better. Right, I don't know whether you heard what Darren's saying. He's had the opportunity of meeting him, and never mind Tommy Robinson, he's not here to defend himself, but he says people who support him are essentially far right or even racist. How would you respond to Darren?
He's very, very much mistaken.
How am I mistaken when I've met the gentleman? If you can tell me statistically, for instance now, to break it down, if you can show me any of his videos, I've been to one of his marches, and I've spoken to his wife. If you show me statistically how many black members are actually there, then you can see how many followers he's got with other cultural diversities. He haven't got many.
OK, let's get Andy back in. Andy.
Yeah. Well, what do you want me to say? There's not many black people support him. Probably not. He is certainly not racist. I've been to some of his things. My son's a member of the DFLA.
Right. That's the Democratic Football Lads Alliance or Association.
Our family originated from Ireland. We've got West Indian, Sikhs, all sorts in our family.
Right.
So we're far from racist whatsoever.
How old is your son, Andy? How old is your son, Andy?
He's 23.
Right. I mean, the Football Lads Alliance, not the Democrat, but the Football Lads Alliance, one of their goals was to hang the Muslim mayor, Sadiq Khan. Why would you want your son? Why would you want your son in that organisation?
That was, as far as I know, that was just put up on a page. You know what I mean?
Well,
that nobody wanted to. You know, the majority of people do not want to hang Sadiq Khan. Might want to replace him, but certainly not hang him.
Well, yes, that's what elections are for. I understand that. What is the appeal in Tommy Robinson for you, then, Andy?
He's just a normal working class guy,
right?
Who's managed to carve himself a platform. You know, despite the heavy criticism and the bias reporting from the media,
right?
And you know,
where's the bias?
Yourself,
go on.
When he was locked up, there was a major demonstration.
Yes.
Afterwards, and I was listening to you on the radio, and you said a few thousand or a few hundred. Then you got to a few thousand, and you couldn't believe it that there was veterans there, which I am.
Right.
There was over 40,000, 50,000 people there.
Are you sure there were that many people there?
Yes.
Right. Okay. I don't recall that figure, but all right. But unfortunately, I wasn't there.
No, I know you wasn't there, but you did highlight it yourself on your TV programme.
Right.
When the young lady said about everyone's talking about him, and then you read the reports about...
Right.
I think there was a grooming trial going on in Oxford, and you criticised how nobody was actually reporting it or reporting it properly.
Right. Do you not... I mean, the point here is, as I often say, do you not think that the media has helped bring awareness of the grooming issue by the reporting it's done on Rochdale and Oxford and Rotherham and Telford?
I think you'll find that Mr Robinson actually was the first person to highlight it, and then the guy from the Times who...
Andrew Norfolk is the journalist.
That's it. He actually referenced Tommy Robinson in his press thing, or whatever it was.
Yes.
This is where he got the very first inklings that there could be a story there.
Yes, yes. What do you think he would bring to UKIP if he were to join, Andy?
Thousands of new members.
Because he has that. All right, let's bring Darren. Do you think he'd bring thousands of new members, and is it the look that UKIP would want anyway? Darren?
I think personally, if you brought Tommy Robinson and, by the way, we just finished UKIP, UKIP itself, it's going downhill, so, in my opinion, so it's shown. But if you bring Tommy Robinson involved, it's just an extremely part. Reason being, he only goes for, I should say, not the wealthier or that sounds really ignorant now. He doesn't go for the more the affluent voter. And what I mean by that, he would go for, I should say, socially deprived areas.
Well, there's still votes, Darren. Everybody has a vote. That vote is important as someone who owns half of Hereford. Sure.
Absolutely. I'm trying to say, I've completely worded that wrong. Please forgive me.
All right.
What I'm trying to say to you is that the vote he would go for won't be more of the... He would go for the working class vote, probably.
Right.
If people want to blame people in society, they haven't achieved something. People want to blame the foreigners coming over taking the job. They go for them votes, definitely.
That's a good point. Lastly, thank you, Darren.
Mike is on the phone from Ware in Hertfordshire with a view. Hello, Mike.
Yeah, hello. What I'm hoping Theresa May is going to say that after yesterday's, you can only call it humiliation. That's what it was, but it wasn't humiliation for Theresa May. It was humiliation for our country, basically. And I think what I'm hoping here from her is that she's gone as far as she's prepared to go. She's gone way beyond what she promised she would do. She's crossed red lines already. And basically, I think that what the majority of people in this country want is, certainty. So what she should say to the EU is, look, we've done our best to try to come to an agreement with you. So we're giving you notice now that we're going to withdraw in March of next year and trade on WTO terms. That's certainty. You get on with it.
So preempting the possibility of being told no deal from the EU side and just saying that's it. We're not talking anymore until you've come up with something.
Well, the thing is, how many times does she have to be humiliated? It's happened umpteen times over the last 2 years. I know the negotiations on our behalf have not been handled correctly, because what we should have done at the very outset, if you remember, we offered to settle the issue of EU citizens' rights in this country and the reciprocal arrangement.
That seems a long time ago.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but it was turned down flat. They said, it's going to be all or nothing. So that was their decision, okay? It was a gesture of goodwill on our part, but it was turned down. So now, lots of things are coming to light. I tried to get through to James O'Brien earlier, because he keeps banging on about, all the lies that are being told. And the thing is, what's come out, and I've not seen any of it on any of media, was basically on the subject of immigration, for example. We've had figures from the Office for National Statistics and Migration Watch, hardly right-wing rags, hardly right-wing, saying that in the period 2000 to 2016, the percentage of births in this country to
foreign-born mothers
and their children represents 80% of the increase in our population during that period. Now, no one's ever explained that.
But Mike, you can't be suggesting that we are not talking about immigration and birth rates and people coming to this country and whether they integrate and whether it's a good thing for the country. You can't say we don't talk about that. The Migration Advisory Council report that we talked about earlier on this week on LBC and other media outlets covered it extensively. I mean, we've sort of covered that. We know it's important.
No, we haven't covered it. We haven't covered it. Are you telling me that you or anyone on your programme has ever announced to the public or agreed with the figures from the Office of National Statistics and Migration Watch that 80% of the increase in our births...
Mike, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it is incredibly important numbers, and it is something that we talk about, Mike. So, yes, I have to confess that I'm not one of those. If others do not talk about it, then fine, but I certainly do and will. I haven't been on air since those numbers came out.
Perhaps we should be talking about the impact on this country of those figures and what it's doing to services.
I think we do. I could take you through it one by one at the moment, but it's 1:25. We're 20 minutes away from Theresa May standing at the lectern at number 10. Mike, before I let you go, what do you think's going to happen?
Well, what I think is going to happen is that Theresa May is going to be another fudge. I think she's going to say, well, our plan is the only one that we've got, and basically the EU are going to have to bend, and they're not going to bend. It's obvious to a child.
Well, they do appear more unified than we were led to believe that they might be when these negotiations began. Mike, appreciate your time. Take care, mate. Thank you very much indeed. Carol is in Stanmore. Hello, Carol. Go ahead.
Hello, Andrew. Thank you for putting me on. I believe that she has never sounded more prime ministerial than she did today. For the first time, I was 100% behind her. Although she didn't have his turn of phrase, she was Churchillian in the fact of what was happening to us, what was being done, and she's restored this country's dignity. We are not grovelling to Europe. We are not, although it may well cost us. Personally, I think in the long run, we may well benefit, and I sincerely hope we do, and that way we'll be telling them to stick their ideas where the sun doesn't shine.
Carol, that's terrible.
I know, and I'm an educated lady, and I'm trying to put my argument forcefully.
Very good.
Whilst you say some of her ideas are personal, they are integral to what is British. We want to keep the Union. She did hint that there could be some tweaking on the Northern Ireland issue with the borders. I'm not too clear on them myself, but I figured that what she was saying allowed for a very small amount of leeway.
Carol, hold on. Can you hold on a second? I want you to. I want you to talk to Tim in Southend. Hello, Tim. Have your say first. Carol says that Theresa May was Churchillian. Go for it.
Oh, yeah. Hello, Andrew. Hi, Carol. I'm just astonished. I'm absolutely astonished because.
I'm so sorry.
Hold on a second, Carol. Let Tim have his say, then you can have a pop at him.
What I heard Theresa May effectively say was, I've spent 2 years trying to negotiate something with people who don't want to negotiate with me, and I've got absolutely nowhere. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to sit on my hands and wait for them and hope they come back with something that I can agree with. And meanwhile, I'm not actually going to do anything to implement the will of the people that was decided over 2 years ago. That's what I heard. And I'm just astonished that nobody can listen to talking about Ireland and talking about EU citizens' rights that was talked about 2 years ago, and we're still talking about it.
Okay.
Where's the trade deal? Where's the
very, very simple.
Carol,
She has represented what the people wanted. She can go so far and no further. And as I said before, if she climbs down any further, we'll be grovelling. And we don't need to. We really, really don't need to. We need to stand firm, stand proud, and she needs to get the backing of all of her MPs, whatever their personal issues, and people like Tim, who think that she's sitting on her hands. She's not. She said, the door is still open.
Carol?
Come back to me. She wouldn't say come back to me if it wasn't still open.
Carol, good talking to you. Last word to you, Tim, 20 seconds.
Yeah. As I was saying, I didn't hear her. I was hoping she was going to say, while she was waiting to see what the EU came back with, she was going to get on with defining the tariff policy that this country needs to implement the WTO rules. That's what I was hoping to. And she did not say that. She still hasn't got any trading or economic arrangement in place with the EU, and we're leaving in 6 months' time.
Hurtling towards no deal, nothing written in stone or Churchillian. That's Tim and Carol debating on LBC.
Going to Ken on the line from Manchester.
Hi, Maajid. Your texter took a bit my thunder. Where he was saying about the simple majority.
Yep.
That's what I was going to say. But
do you agree with me that surely the Scottish referendum wasn't on a simple majority, was it, Ken?
Right, no, but we were sold this referendum on a simple majority. Whoever won, that's what was going to happen. And that's what I believe. That's what I voted for. I actually voted to...
No, but you just said no, Ken. You just answered my question with a no. Why is it that it was OK for the Scottish referendum not to be held by a simple majority, but rather a qualified majority, and yet for the... Hold on. And yet for the EU referendum, for it to be a simple majority?
I don't know why they had that as rules for that referendum, but we were sold...
Well, may I attempt to tell you why? May I give you my view? I think... It's because such important questions of constitutional integrity mustn't come down to 1 or 2 or 3% of the public's vote. Surely, if, for example, Ken, let me ask you a question. If we were going to have a public vote, a referendum, on whether we should disestablish our monarchy and our Queen, would you be satisfied for it to be a decision made by the great British public on a margin of 2%?
If the majority of the people wanted to do it, the majority of the people, that's what democracy is.
That's not the question I asked you, Ken.
Yeah, but I would say yes.
So hang on, Ken, that's not... So let me...
You've just asked me the question.
No.
Would I be happy on 2%? Yes.
So all right, okay, so you would have that kind of vote on a simple majority?
Simple majority, yes.
Right.
If the majority of the people want to do it, then that's what we should go with.
And you would have that same vote for the breakup of the United Kingdom, say with the Scottish referendum. You're happy with simple majorities?
If the majority of the people want to do that, that's what democracy is.
Right. That's not democracy, Ken. No, that's a version.
Yes, it is democracy.
No, Ken, hold on.
It's a version of democracy.
It's a version of democracy because it's not the version we implemented with the Scottish referendum.
But what's the rules for that? The rules that we were told on this referendum were simple majority.
Yeah, I know you were told those rules, and that's not the mistake of that's not my mistake. It's not the mistake of that's because David Cameron called it on a simple majority.
Yeah, but that's what the rules were, and that's what the people believed in.
Yeah, and you won.
So we believe the rules.
Ken, and you won. And we've had 2 years of the Prime Minister attempting to carve out a negotiated Brexit, right? And you're not... Are you happy with the Chequers plan, Ken?
No. What we should be looking at is going back to what it used to be, where it was... If we had a choice, this is what my belief is, if we could just have the EEC, where we're just trading nations, we're not integrated, we're not trying to form another country, I would be happy with that. But because we're trying to form a country called the European Union, I'm not for that.
Okay, Ken, are you happy with Theresa May's Chequers deal?
No.
Right. So what are you going to do about it, Ken?
Pardon?
What are you going to do about it?
Well, on the ballot paper, what should be happening, this is what I believe, it should be the European Union, it should be the Chequers plan, or should we leave without?
So you do agree with the second vote?
No, I don't agree with the second vote. I don't want a second vote. I just want us to leave. But the establishment is going to go that way.
Well, no, Ken, that's not... I ask you, what do you want to happen? Because the Prime Minister...
What do I want? What do I want? I want us just to leave the European Union.
But Ken, we're in the real world. The Prime Minister's got a Chequers plan. She's going to say, this is us leaving, right? So now, in the real world, not in your fantasy land, in the world Ken, in the world we're currently in, what do you want to happen next with Theresa May's Chequers plan? Because she's going to say, right, this is Brexit. Now, you've got a choice, Ken. Either you back it, or if you want to get out of it, either there needs to be a general election or a second public vote. Which way do you want to go, Ken? Or, clearly, of course, you can present to me a fourth scenario if you can think of one. But I need to know from Ken, not what you think the establishment wants to do, but Ken the Brexiteer. What should happen next? And how does Ken the Brexiteer practically, using the constitutional and electoral setup of our nation, achieve what Ken the Brexiteer wants?
Right. The only way, then, is a general election.
An election? A general election?
General election, yeah.
A general election, yeah?
Yes.
Right, in that general election, say Theresa May basically campaigns for her Chequers deal, and Labour, because of the Labour majority, 86% wanting a second vote, public vote on the terms of Brexit, Labour back a second public vote, right? And Theresa May's campaigning on her Chequers deal. How does Ken vote?
I would vote for Theresa May.
For the Chequers deal?
Yeah.
OK, thank you very much, Ken. Good afternoon. It's Maajid Nawaz here on LBC. Going to go straight back to the call. Simon has been waiting from Basingstoke. Speak to us, Simon.
Yeah, Maajid, this is the dumbest conversation I've ever heard, and what really frightens me is that this is no attack on yourself, but our political class must be completely stupid. What we've done is we've activated Article 50.
Yeah.
We can have a second referendum here and vote to remain. We can have a vote in Parliament and say that we want to completely negate the previous referendum that said we would leave. It makes no difference. The only way we can not leave the European Union is if 27 countries vote and go through their own parliaments where they're required to by their constitutions to allow us to remain in the European Union.
I'm not so sure about that. Are you suggesting that because Article 50 has been triggered, it's now legally binding on every single European country, including us?
Yeah, that's what it is. It's a legally binding agreement. That's what Article 50 means, and that is that process is explicitly defined within Article 50 and the rest of the treaty.
I'm not so sure.
It is, Maajid. It absolutely is.
Not so sure. Why is it Simon in Basingstoke is the only man saying this?
Because I think people have been absolutely too wrapped up in the whole idea of the process.
Including the PM and all of her aides and all of the opposition and every other political commentator in the country.
Well, Maajid, sometimes people don't read things. They just think, oh, yes, we can reverse this. We can reverse the referendum decision.
Yeah, but there's entire desks of people in the civil service reading this stuff.
Well, Maajid, all I can say is read Article 50 and find the clause in Article 50 which says I'm wrong.
Well,
I would suggest everybody read Article 50 and understand what that process means.
So let me, Simon, let me read to you something from Lord Kerr, who's the author of Article 50. Yeah, I'm going to quote to you Lord Kerr's words, and then it's Lord Kerr versus Simon in Basingstoke. Lord Kerr says, you can change your mind while the process is going on. End of quote.
Yeah, and if that were to happen, every single leaver in the UK could get together and have a law case, and we could take it to the European Court and say, how do you interpret Article 50 in such a way? It doesn't say
Simon, that's the greatest, biggest, fattest, whopping change of goalposts in radio history, Simon, from Basingstoke. You just said Article 50 cannot be reversed, and every single member of the European Union as a country will need to vote on its reversal if we choose to stay in the European Union. Those were your words. It's just been broadcast to the nation. Then I read to you the author of Article 50 himself, Lord Kerr, saying it can be reversed. And then, almost as if you have amnesia of something you said only a minute before, say, well, if that were to happen, we'd sue. So, hang on, which is it, Simon? Can Article 50 be reversed or not?
And that's not what I'm saying. You interpret what is written in a law or regulation.
Simon, can Article 50 be reversed or not?
That says there is nothing in that regulation that says you can do that.
Simon, sorry, right? You began by saying this is the dumbest conversation ever because Article 50 cannot be legally reversed. I quote to you the author of Article 50 saying, the man who wrote it, saying it can be reversed while the process is still going on, and then you change the goalposts. Please, can Article 50 be reversed once it's triggered?
Point me to the sentence in Article 50 which says it can be reversed, and I will completely admit that I am wrong. Point me to what the sentence in that one single paragraph that says that.
Okay, so can we now accept it's Simon's opinion versus the author of Article 50's opinion?
No, it's what's written in Article 50 against what someone who wrote it said after they'd written it. If he had said...
I think, Simon, this is hilarious. This is so funny.
At any point it can be reversed.
Okay, Simon in Basingstoke, who didn't write Article 50, is the great constitutional lawyer, but the author, Lord Kerr, doesn't know what he's talking about.
No, Simon from Basingstoke actually can read, and it doesn't say that.
And the man who wrote it can't.
It doesn't say, Maajid, it doesn't say that. What it requires is, unanimity.
You just need a drum roll after that, Simon. This is the best entertainment I've had all morning on this rainy Sunday. Thank you. Because for you to begin this conversation by saying this is the dumbest conversation ever, Simon, sometimes people project. And may I suggest to you, in an ever so polite way, that it's not us being dumb in this conversation, Simon. It may well be Simon from Basingstoke.
Can I respond?
Yes.
Can I respond, Maajid?
Please, the mic's yours.
Right, okay, well, the point is, this is not in our power to change. The power to change whether we leave the European or not is in the hands of 27 other European nations.
That's according to you, Simon. The author of the Article 50 says once it's triggered, there's nothing stopping us reversing it until it's implemented. Now, what I'm asking you, Simon, is do you have any constitutional legal training?
No, I do not.
Do you think the author of Article 50, Lord Kerr, does?
Substantial sums of money to interpret European legislation.
No, but Simon, do you have any British constitutional legal training?
There isn't a British constitution, Maajid. There's an unwritten constitution, which is one of the large problems we currently face.
Simon, that answer in itself indicates to me that you don't have any British constitutional training, because the fact we have an unwritten constitution in legal language doesn't mean you can't have constitutional legal training. It's not really relevant whether it's written or unwritten. There is something called a body of constitutional law in this country, and there is no clear legal position. There is no definitive answer to whether Article 50 can be reversed. Not the author, Lord Kerr, says it can, and I'm wondering where Simon gets his authority from.
But I get my authority from reading Article 50, Maajid. If you can point to me where it says...
No, but you've just admitted you're not a trained... Are you a trained lawyer in any sense of the word? Are you trained in any element of law?
No, but I have to interpret law as part of my job. But
surely when this is disputed, that surely the opinion of the author who's still alive, it's not like the US Constitution, when we're trying to work out what the Founding Fathers intended, and that's the dispute that Supreme Court... judges get engaged in as to whether they should stick to the spirit of the law or the letter of the law. That is, when the author of the article is still alive, surely his opinion counts.
Absolutely, Maajid.
Right, so it's not so clear-cut, is it?
The actual interpretation of the law is the responsibility of the supreme legal body of the European Union.
May I add,
Simon,
may I add another element to this conversation? And it's not just Lord Kerr's opinion. The author of Article 50 says it can be reversed. What about the recently a leaked European Parliament draft resolution, which has stated that the UK will be able to revoke Article 50 before it expires? So that's another element, that it appears to be the case that the European Parliament thinks it can be reversed as well.
As you say, thinks.
Right,
that's not what the law says. It's not what... all it takes, Maajid, is one country to disagree with us and disagree with our interpretation and say, yes, you can cancel Article 50, but you cannot continue to have a rebate.
May I add a third element here, Simon? So Simon in Basingstoke, representing Simon in Basingstoke, is arguing it cannot be reversed, as well as the author of Article 50 saying it can, as well as a leaked document from the European Parliament saying it can. We also have the European Council President Donald Tusk suggesting last year that Britain could indeed change its mind on the triggering of Article 50. But unlegally trained Simon in Basingstoke, who began the conversation by saying this is the dumbest conversation ever, who isn't legally trained in our constitutional law, says it cannot be reversed. And all I'm suggesting is I'm not saying it can definitely be reversed. I'm saying it's not as black and white as that, and there's no clear legal position on it. There we have it, folks. Simon in Basingstoke obviously knows best. Anthony from Staines.
Yes, good morning, Maajid. Yes, well, let me just say that we're going to get through this. We're going to get through to next March without a general election, without a second ballot, and May will still be there.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. All right. Explain.
Yes.
Explain.
Because she has two things on the side. One is the economy, which is doing relatively well, and that gives a little bit of leeway with that old money tree. Oh, yeah. And you watch her.
You mean the one she shook when she gave all that money to the...
Yes. And she's rather lucky.
Yeah.
Because she hasn't gone into McDonald territory and nationalised everything. She's got that money to throw at the DUP. She can give them a little bit more money, and she can even play around with Scotland and get that vote through. It is, inshallah, it is fate that we go out of the EU. We have to really put our faith in whatever.
What?
It is.
You were being all logical there, and then suddenly it's fate, so it's just going to happen because it's destined.
Yes.
Is there some bad karma coming round to hit us because we did something nasty to the Europeans? It's just destined.
Well, no, I think it's good karma. I think that,
I can sense that. Which is, may I suggest to you, it's why you think it's fate. If I've got somebody under my boot and my foot is on their head and they're like, on the floor, and I say it's fate that you're down there, it's because I'm quite happy with where I am, Anthony. So may I suggest to you that you're saying it's fate because you're happy that we're Brexiting?
Indeed, because we just sort of pick ourselves up, get that foot off our head and move forward, which I think is what Theresa May is actually quite good at.
How long do you think it will take us to recover from the Brexit slump?
It won't. There won't be a slump. I guarantee you, we will continue, the economy will continue on this upward track we have at the moment. There might be a few cows delayed at the border, but we will continue.
A no-deal option won't have any impact on the pound or the strength of our economy or jobs?
Really? I'll tell you why, because we have a transition.
Yeah.
And that means we'll still be in that single market, so then we can work out something, and if we don't by then, well... we really will be in a mess.
So when Theresa May came back after the Salzburg rejection and gave that speech from Downing Street, and the pound plummeted to its lowest level since the referendum vote, and that, by the way, is after it plummeted at the referendum vote already. I remember what the pound used to be like against the dollar at 1.6. It's now somewhere around, 1.4? What is it? So at the end of the day, Anthony, already it's happening. So I don't understand how you think it's not going to happen.
Well, because the economy, if you look at the figures, our economy is doing relatively well, and certainly doing better than Europe now. We are in recovery from that hit we hit after the Brexit vote, and GDP is up. Unemployment, we haven't got unemployment in Europe, don't forget.
Well, if the governor of the Bank of England is saying that 30% will be wiped off the value of the property market...
He's like Starmer. He's another old Ramona.
Okay.
We have to get away from this.
Yeah. So
we have to be strong.
So experts' opinions only matter when they're Brexiteers?
Well, we know the experts from the polls at the last general election, don't we? We know we can trust them.
Anthony, you do sound a bit like the chap that called in and said Article 50 isn't reversible because he says it isn't, even though he'd had no constitutional training. When I suggested to him that Lord Kerr, the author of Article 50, said it was reversible, he said he knew better than Lord Kerr.
I don't really trust Lords because they're just packed full of Ramonas, aren't they? And they're really well past their sell-by date.
It's beautiful.
I trust May.
It's beautiful. It's all coming out now. So the Governor of the Bank of England, you know better when it comes to our economy than the Governor of the Bank of England. You know better when it comes to constitutional law than Lord Kerr because he's a member of the House of Lords. What is it? Is there anything that anyone who doesn't agree with your political views can say with any credibility that you would accept at face value?
Not really, because we know that these experts, as Gove said, are not really worth the paper they're written on. What I trust is the people who are trading, the individuals and their customers and the people who actually drive this economy. And they're the ones who are driving it.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you. I think that in itself was self-evident there. But you got the last word.
I know he's a moron.